Welcome my friends. Who was Jezebel? Jezebel was the daughter of King Ethbal, the king of Sidon, a Phoenician city-state, and was a princess before her marriage to King Ahab of Israel. Her marriage to Ahab was politically motivated, as it sought to secure an alliance between Israel and the Phoenicians. Jezebel's story in the Bible. 1. Marriage to Ahab. 1 Kings 16:31, Jezebel is introduced as the wife of Ahab, who was the king of Israel. Ahab's reign is marked by idolatry, and he did more evil in the eyes of the Lord than all the kings before him. Jezebel played a pivotal role in leading Israel into worship of Baal, a Canaanite fertility god. 1 Kings 16:31 says, Ahab son of Omri did more evil in the eyes of the Lord than any of those before him. He not only considered it trivial to commit the sins of Jeroboam son of Nebat, but he also married Jezebel daughter of Ethbal king of the Sidonians, and began to serve Baal and worship him. 2. Promotion of Baal worship. 1 Kings 16:32-33, Jezebel is directly responsible for promoting the worship of Baal and Asherah in Israel. She persuaded Ahab to build a temple for Baal in the capital, Samaria, and led the people in the worship of false gods. Ahab also made an Asherah pole and did more to arouse the anger of the Lord, the God of Israel, than did all the kings of Israel before him. 1 Kings 18:19-22, Jezebel's actions were so influential that she sought to destroy the prophets of the Lord. She ordered the killing of the prophets of Yahweh and replaced them with 450 prophets of Baal. In response to her evil, the prophet Elijah challenges her prophets to a public contest on Mount Carmel, proving that Yahweh is the true God. 1 Kings 18:19-20, Elijah calls for the gathering of Israel to witness the confrontation between the prophets of Baal and him, the lone prophet of Yahweh. Now summon the people from all over Israel to meet me on Mount Carmel. And bring the 450 prophets of Baal and the 400 prophets of Asherah, who eat at Jezebel's table. 3. The death of the prophets of Baal. 1 Kings 18:36-40, Elijah, in the famous contest on Mount Carmel, demonstrates the power of God by calling down fire from heaven to consume his sacrifice, while the prophets of Baal fail to summon fire from their God. The people then kill the 450 prophets of Baal under Elijah's command. 1 Kings 18:40, after the victory, Elijah orders the execution of the prophets of Baal. Seize the prophets of Baal. Don't let anyone get away. They seized them, and Elijah had them brought down to the Kishon Valley and slaughtered them there. 4. Jezebel's vengeance. 1 Kings 19:1-2, after the death of the prophets of Baal, Jezebel seeks revenge. She sends a message to Elijah, swearing that she will kill him as he killed the prophets. In fear, Elijah flees for his life, and God provides for him during his journey. Jezebel sent a messenger to Elijah to say, "May the gods deal with me, be it ever so severely, if by this time tomorrow I do not make your life like that of one of them." 5. Jezebel's death. 2 Kings 9:30-37, Jezebel's life ends in a dramatic and violent manner. After Ahab's death, Jehu is anointed as king of Israel and is commanded by God to destroy the house of Ahab, including Jezebel. When Jehu arrives in Jezebel's palace, she dresses herself in royal attire and mocks him. However, Jehu orders her to be thrown out of the window by her servants, and she is trampled by horses. Her body is later devoured by dogs, fulfilling a prophecy made by Elijah. 2 Kings 9:36-37. This is the word of the Lord that he spoke through his servant Elijah the Tishbite, on the plot of ground at Jezreel dogs will devour Jezebel's flesh. Jezebel's body will be like dung on the ground in the plot at Jezreel, so that no one will be able to say, "This is Jezebel." Significance of Jezebel in the Bible. Symbol of idolatry and wickedness, Jezebel is remembered for her strong promotion of Baal worship and her opposition to the prophets of the true God. She became a symbol of idolatry, deception, and spiritual corruption. Her efforts to lead Israel away from Yahweh marked a low point in Israel's spiritual history. Persecution of prophets. Jezebel's attempt to exterminate the prophets of Yahweh, including the prophet Elijah, demonstrates her commitment to false worship and her opposition to the truth. Her persecution of God's messengers highlights the dangers of compromising with evil and the destruction that can come from disregarding God's will. Her violent end. Jezebel's death was a direct fulfillment of the prophecies given by Elijah, showing that God's judgment on her and her house was inevitable. Her demise, marked by violence and dishonor, serves as a warning about the consequences of arrogance, idolatry, and persecution of the righteous. Legacy: in the New Testament, Jezebel is used as a symbol of false teachings and immorality. In Revelation 2:20, the church in Thyatira is warned against tolerating a false prophetess referred to as Jezebel, who leads people into sexual immorality and idolatry. Where is Jezebel mentioned? 1 Kings 16:31, Introduction to Jezebel and her marriage to Ahab. 1 Kings 18:19-22, Elijah challenges the prophets of Baal. 1 Kings 19:1-2, Jezebel's threat to kill Elijah. 2 Kings 9:30-37, the death of Jezebel. Key verses. 1 Kings 16:31, Ahab also married Jezebel, daughter of Ethbaal, king of the Sidonians, and began to serve Baal and worship him. 1 Kings 18:40, seize the prophets of Baal. Don't let anyone get away. They seized them, and Elijah had them brought down to the Kishon Valley and slaughtered them there. 2 Kings 9:36-37, this is the word of the Lord that he spoke through his servant Elijah the Tishbite, on the plot of ground at Jezreel dogs will devour Jezebel's flesh. Jezebel's story in the Bible serves as a warning against idolatry, wickedness, and the destruction that comes from rejecting God's truth. Her life and death exemplify the dangers of leading others into sin, the consequences of spiritual corruption, and the certainty of divine judgment. Her name has become synonymous with evil and falsehood in both the Old and New Testaments. What is the theological meaning of Jezebel and her story? Jezebel is one of the most infamous women in the Bible, and her story is rich with theological and moral significance. Her name has become synonymous with wickedness, manipulation, and idolatry, and her life serves as a cautionary tale in Christian theology. Background: Jezebel was a Phoenician princess, daughter of King Ethbaal of Sidon, and she married King Ahab of Israel. This marriage was politically motivated, designed to strengthen ties between Israel and Phoenicia. However, it led to significant theological consequences, as Jezebel was a staunch worshipper of Baal, the Canaanite god of fertility, storms, and rain, while Ahab, despite being an Israelite, allowed the worship of foreign gods. Theological themes and meaning. Idolatry and false worship. Jezebel's most significant theological role is as an advocate for idolatry. She introduced and zealously promoted the worship of Baal in Israel, leading to the construction of altars and temples to this false god. In the biblical context, this was a grave sin, as the Israelites were supposed to worship Yahweh, the one true God. Her actions directly contributed to Israel's spiritual decline. Key scripture: 1 Kings 16:31-33 recounts how she stirred up Israel's idolatry. This highlights the biblical view that idolatry is not just an individual sin, but one that can corrupt entire nations. Corruption of power. Jezebel's story is also a warning about the corrupting influence of power and influence. She used her position as queen to manipulate situations for her benefit, including the murder of Naboth, an innocent man, to seize his vineyard, 1 Kings 21. Her actions show how power, when abused, can lead to injustice and oppression. Key scripture: the Naboth incident, 1 Kings 21, is particularly significant in showing the destructive consequences of her thirst for power and control. Confrontation with prophets. Jezebel was a fierce opponent of the prophets of Yahweh, especially Elijah. She attempted to kill Elijah after he triumphed over the prophets of Baal on Mount Carmel, 1 Kings 18, showcasing her hostility to anyone who challenged her authority and the worship of Baal. Key scripture: in 1 Kings 19:1-2, Jezebel vows to kill Elijah, but God ultimately protects his prophets, as seen in Elijah's escape and the continued prophetic mission. Moral decay and wickedness. Jezebel's actions exemplify the biblical concept of moral decay. Her willingness to kill for personal gain, her promotion of wickedness, and her disregard for God's law all mark her as a symbol of rebellion against God's order. In theological terms, her life represents the destructive effects of sin when it goes unchecked. Key scripture: Revelation 2:20-23 makes a direct reference to Jezebel, calling out a woman in the early Christian church who was leading believers into idolatry and sexual immorality, echoing Jezebel's influence. Divine judgment. Jezebel's story also serves as a reminder of God's judgment on evil. Despite her power and influence, she was eventually overthrown. After Ahab's death, Jezebel's violent end came when she was thrown out of a window and eaten by dogs. 2 Kings 9:30-37, a fulfillment of a prophecy Elijah had made about her violent death. This shows that God's justice will ultimately prevail, even over the most powerful and corrupt individuals. Key scripture, 2 Kings 9:36-37 outlines the fulfillment of the prophecy that Jezebel's body would be devoured by dogs, a stark representation of the consequences of her actions. Symbolism in Christian theology. In Christian tradition, Jezebel often symbolizes the dangers of false teachings and the seductive lure of idolatry. Her story serves as a warning against compromising with evil, as well as a reminder of God's justice in punishing wickedness. In the New Testament, she is sometimes used as a metaphor for those who lead others astray into immorality and false worship. Revelation 2:20-23 uses Jezebel as a symbol of those who promote heretical teachings and immoral behavior within the church, warning believers against being led astray by such figures. Jezebel's connection with idolatry is often used to remind Christians of the importance of staying faithful to God alone and rejecting anything that takes His place in our lives. Jezebel's theological significance is multifaceted. She represents the dangers of idolatry, the corruption of power, the consequences of sin, and God's eventual justice. Her story continues to resonate with biblical themes of righteousness versus wickedness, and her life serves as a stark warning about the destructive power of turning away from God. I hope this has helped you.